Jeff studied at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, where he got his bachelor's degree, and then he got his master's degree in journalism, I believe, at Marquette University.
Okay. And when was it that he came to Las Vegas?
1978.
So quite a while ago.
Yep.
Do you know where he worked prior to working at the Review-Journal? Did he work at the Sun?
Oh, he did. Yeah, when he moved out here, he started working at the Las Vegas Sun.
Okay. So he was a reporter for a number of years here?
Yeah, since he moved out here. Yeah, he took the job and drove his car across country.
Do you remember him ever talking about particular stories or events that were important to him as a reporter?
Well, I'd have to think about that, but I mean, Jeff took seriously every story that he worked on. He really did. I mean, he investigated. He really enjoyed being an investigative reporter, and I mean, there were a lot of stories he worked on. I know the Binion murder trial was a big one in his life, but there are so many.
And what kind of things did you two do as brothers?
Well, first of all, he taught me how to play golf, and he was a good teacher. He really was, and he was a natural. I wasn't, but I think I only beat him one time in my ever. But he so we liked to play sports. We would play football and basketball right around behind the house. There was a big field where we played football, so I learned how to play. So we did a lot of sports. He took me to my first Milwaukee Brewers game, I think when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. Movies, we went to a lot of movies. I remember that when we were younger. And even when we got a little older, he liked going to movies.
Were you living here in Las Vegas in September of 22?
I was, yes.
Can you tell the members of the jury how you learned about his death?
Yeah, it was a tough night. My sister Julie called me, woke me up. I don't know, it might have been 11 o'clock or so at night, and broke the news to me. It was devastating. And I mean, I certainly didn't sleep at all that night, the rest of the night. But yeah, it was a tough one.
And how do you feel that, like observing your two sisters, how would you say that this event has impacted your sisters and your observations of them?
It's been really hard. I mean, it's been a hard couple of years. I mean, Jeff was our leader. You know, he was the older brother that we all leaned on. And yeah, it was hard for them.
And how about for yourself?
Difficult.
And are there particular events that you've kind of wished he'd been there at, or? Yeah,
I mean, I just retired, and Jeff had no interest in retiring. 2 years ago, he was 69 years old, and he was just, he loved what he was doing, and we talked about it. He just wanted to keep writing and investigating, but my goal when moving out here a few years ago was to spend time with the family, and Jeff especially, because we had gotten closer as we got older, and I was hoping that we could spend time playing some golf when we retired, going to movies, going to Raider games and Golden Knights games. I miss all that with him.
Yeah. Your Honor, I believe Mr. Draskovich is stipulating to the admission of 412 and 413.
That is correct.
Sir, I'm going to put on the overhead states 412. Who are we looking at there?
Yeah, is that Jeff or is that? Yeah, that's Jeff. Yeah, I can't tell what age. Oh my God, what age that is. But he was a natural athlete. He just loved baseball too, and I mean, I think when he took me to that first Brewers game, he liked. I mean, he loved it as much as I did. Yeah.
And now I'm going to put on the overhead states 413. Looks like you're a bit older in this picture.
You know when this is from? This is from New Year's Eve, 1980, so December 31st. And I'll tell you, I can't remember if it's 79 or 80, but I was in college. Jeff had been out here, 1 or 2 years, and I flew to from Milwaukee to Las Vegas. It was my first time on an airplane, and this was the first trip that I took up many that would come going forward over the years. But he said, come on out, because I hadn't seen him since he moved out to Milwaukee, since he drove his car out here back in the middle of 1978. And we spent the New Year's Eve on the Strip. It was just a great night. I'll never forget it, and it was so memorable. I mean, and it was just, look how young he was.
Yeah.
So.
Is there anything else you'd like the jury to know about how this crime has impacted yourself and your family?
Well, it's been very stressful over the past couple of years. I wouldn't want anybody to go through this. It was devastating to the family. It really was. We loved him, and he loved us. And I mean, a big part of Jeff's life was spending time with the family. He loved the holidays for that very reason. He loved Thanksgiving, just the whole ritual about him being with the family. It's been, it's going to take a long time, I'm sure, for us to get past this, but, we're doing our best, and we miss him a lot.
Thank you. I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any questions. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
The state will call Gil's word.
You do solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
First name is Jill, Jill. Last name is Zwerg, Zwerg.
Thank you very much. Jill, if you could, just for the record, how are you related to Jeff?
I am the youngest sibling, and Jeffrey's the oldest.
Okay, so you're the baby of the family.
Pardon me?
You're the baby of the family?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I want to publish what's already been admitted by stipulation of states 415. 415 by stipulation.
No.
And I think I have exhibits 414 through 417. I think those all have been admitted by stipulation.
That's correct, Your Honor.
That's 415 through 417, correct?
I think 414, 415, 416, and 417. Those four exhibits.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Publishing 415. Okay. So, who can you tell us who we're looking at here in all these photographs?
Well, that's the four of us. I'm the little tiny one in the left corner with the same haircut as Jay to my right.
Okay.
And then Jeff is a tall one, and then my sister Julie with the no teeth.
All right. I also now want to show you another exhibit, which is been admitted by stipulation as 414. All right. Who are we looking at here?
Well, there we are again. I don't know if we were trying to copy that first photo or not, but I believe it's at my niece's, a celebration for my niece, and we all just got together and tried to take a picture together real quick, and it was really kind of fun, actually.
Okay. I'm publishing 416. Who are we looking at here?
That's Uncle Jeff. That's my daughter. I think she's like 3 or 4 months old. And he couldn't wait to fly in and be with her. She is the firstborn of his nieces and nephews.
And what was her name? Or what is her
Jessica.
name? Jessica.
Is her name.
And then I'd like to publish 417. What are we looking at?
That is Jeff with my son Connor, who is looks pretty much like Jeff. And just they're two peas in a pod. They both into sports and yeah, he just idolized him. He's the only nephew, so he just took to him immediately for that.
I know you've written something, but I do want to ask this. So you've looked at a couple of pictures, at Uncle Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
What was he like as an uncle?
Oh, he was wonderful. He just loved each and every one of them for who they were and accepted them for whatever. They would do quirky little fun things and just loved them with his heart and soul. absolutely.
Did they grow up here in Las Vegas or somewhere else?
They all grew up here.
Okay, so Jeff was kind of here growing up and watching them be raised. Okay, well, listen, I know that you've written something that you'd like to read, so if you could, why don't you share what you've written, share it with the jury, please.
Okay. So most of you know my brother Jeffrey to be a hard-nosed investigative reporter who went after corruption in our city. He wrote about wrongdoings by mobsters, gaming officials, politicians, corporations, basically anyone who was corrupt, and I don't think they could hide from him. Let me give you a little insight to the man behind the byline of Jeffrey M. Gman. Jeff was the eldest sibling of 4, as I stated, and I'm the youngest. There's an 8-year difference between us. He always watched out for me and guided me in my schooling, my work, personal matters. I believe my other siblings, we welcomed his advice, as it usually was on target and gave us a good perspective when we needed it. He always was there for me when I needed him, like a second father for me. And with the age difference, I think that was part of it. After I graduated college, Jeff was very instrumental in helping me acquire my first job here in Las Vegas at the newspaper where he was working. We are very much alike, from our chosen careers to the music we listened to, the food we enjoyed, and going out to happy hours after work. Of course, that was the 80s, that's when it all happened, and that was just a fun thing to do. I remember we were both on the media softball league together, representing the newspaper. It was so much fun, especially when we won games and we would celebrate afterwards. I wasn't going to say this, but now I just feel like I'd like you to hear this. He was the first one I told when I became engaged. We were at Mount Charleston. My now husband proposed to me. It was a Friday night, and we're like, well, now what do we do? He's like, let's go tell Jeff. So we couldn't wait to get back. We knew he'd be at TGI Fridays. He was the first one I told when I got engaged. And he bought a round of champagne for the entire bar. And I'll just never forget that. It was just the most memorable, fun, exciting moment for all of us. I miss reading his stories and seeing his byline. And shopping with him, talking on the phone, and texting with him because he was so bad at texting. Going out for Sunday brunches, having him at our family barbecues and holiday celebrations, especially, as my brother Jay said, at Thanksgiving, where he really ate most of the dark meat and insisted that the TV be on at some type of sporting event, probably football, if I'm not mistaken. These events, these holidays, they'll never be the same without Jeffrey there, ever. He was kind, he was loving, he was loyal, and he was fun. He was a good friend, uncle, brother, and a respected colleague to all who knew him. He had a knack for remembering everyone's birthdays. He never forgot his nieces' and nephews' birthdays. He just loved being their uncle. My son is very much like his Uncle Jeff. They shared a mutual passion for the sports, particularly basketball and football, and of course all the Wisconsin teams, as you know, that's where we're from. My daughter also had a special bond with her Uncle Jeff. They shared a lot in common, like both being Virgos and having journalism degrees as well. I remember asking Jeff why he chose to stay here and not be at other major newspapers who frequently recruited him. He said, Jill, this is Las Vegas, this is Sin City, this is where I need to be. Jeff is fearless of all the corrupt people he called out in his reporting of the mobsters, politicians, casino executives, and so on. Professionally, Jeff had many headline stories that made the national news. Some of you may or may not remember this, but they were breaking news, such as the Judge Harry Claiborne impeachment trial. I was here when that happened. To reporting Chicago mobster Tony the Ants Spilotro and his brothers' murders, to being the first to report Liberace's death and his AIDS diagnosis. Those are just a few of the many breaking stories for Jeff, and they all came out of Las Vegas, Nevada. Jeff is a trusted, top-notch journalist and author of the top-rated Lifetime Network television movie made from his book, The Death of a Las Vegas Casino Boss, Murder in Sin City, and that was the Ted Binion murder story. His award-winning podcast, Mobbed Up, The Fight for Las Vegas, is still heard by many. He belonged to a class of journalists that are in a league of their own. Not many reporters out there will ever match his caliber and investigative journalism and storytelling. These past 2 years have felt like I've been living in a chapter of a murder novel as it unfolds. One that my brother Jeff could have written, entitled Murder in Sin City, Part 2, The Death of a Journalist. I never imagined that Jeff himself would have become a national headline news story for his murder by a cold-blooded elected city official in broad daylight. But in typical Jeff fashion, he was able to have his attacker identified and locked up behind bars after his own murder. Not only did my family lose a wonderful, loving brother and uncle, but the Las Vegas community and the world of journalism lost an amazing investigative reporter and a relentless crusader for justice. To everyone else, Jeffrey M. Gman was a dedicated and respected journalist. To me, my family, he was our big brother Jeff and our children's loving uncle. He is so deeply missed every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You may step down. And you may call your next witness.
Julie Smith?
Please watch your step. You'll remain standing, raise your right hand, face clear.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Julie Smith, Julie, Julie, Smith, Smith.
May I proceed? Ms. Smith, you are the fourth sibling of the Gman group.
Yes.
I'm going to show you some pictures. I believe Mr. Draskovich will stipulate to the admission of 418 to 423.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And this one I think I get what the event is, but I'll have you describe it. This is states 418.
Yes. This is my daughter Lexi's wedding. So it was nice. We were all together as a family. It was in Lake Tahoe, and she's been married for about, I think it's 8 years.
And now I'm going to put on the overhead states 419.
That's Jeff and my daughter Morgan. They were very close.
And this is states 420.
That's Jeff. I don't know when that picture was taken.
That's okay. 421.
Another picture of Jeff. I'm not sure where that was either. My sister dug up some old pictures.
And this is 422. Looks like the kids are a little younger to me in this one.
Oh yeah, that was a celebration for my youngest daughter, Lexi. It was just a fun celebration. Everyone had their beads on and they were happy, and we got a picture of Jeff with his 3 nieces. Jesse's in there, Morgan, Lexi.
And 423.
Oh, that's a picture of Jeffrey when the girls were young. So it's with Morgan and Lexi. They were just on the couch, and of course there's always a cat in our house. So there's a picture of Daisy with them also.
So it seems like Jeff was a pretty devoted uncle.
Oh my goodness, yes. He loved his nieces. He loved his nephew. He loved just to be around them whenever he could.
And your other siblings have commented that holidays were particularly important for him. Is that your recollection as well?
Very important. We always grew up in our family in Milwaukee when the 4 of us with my mom and dad. And my mom was always kind of the matriarch. She always made a spread for every holiday that we would celebrate. And my sister Jill and Jay, we've continued that with our families.
And have you prepared a statement that you'd like
I did.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's okay. So as you know, Jeff was my older brother. Everyone in our family pretty much looked up to Jeff. He was our oldest sibling. So he always had a very special place in our hearts for Jeff. He just seemed to be the core of our family since my parents were gone. And we all pretty much migrated because of Jeff living here. So it was nice. We were all together finally. Most people who dealt with Jeff, the journalist, knew him to be no nonsense, a straight shooter, who always searched for the truth. He had a nose for sniffing out the corrupt, the nefarious. We knew him to be those things too, but we were very proud of his many years of service to the community and his numerous accolades as a newspaper reporter. But we also saw the side of Jeff that most people, unfortunately, didn't get to experience. Jeff loved his family. He loved spending time with his nieces and nephews. He was especially close to them. As I said previously, he looked forward to hanging out with them whenever he could, especially during family holidays. Basically, he was a family man. He loved being with his family. Sometimes at those family gatherings, it was kind of the place for Jeff to display his playful and awesome biting sense of humor. He loved sitcoms and was especially fond of 2.5 Men and Seinfeld. He had many of the classic lines committed to memory from those shows, and he would use them often. He liked to have a good time. He was always willing to put together a family dinner. He loved to have breakfast with his friends from the newsroom. He just really enjoyed being with people. He loved sports, especially football. I guess you could say it was almost like an obsession with him. Like his commitment to journalism, he took that same approach to his commitment with sports. He could take notes. He knew the stats of players. He pretty much had a near photographic memory, and he could recite almost any score of any game. In another life, Jeff could have been a Las Vegas odds maker. And of course, there was the quirky side of Jeff that we teased him about. His house was meticulous, almost to being a point that it was like a good housekeeping, Better Homes and Garden setup in his house. He was into symmetry. If there was a lamp here on one side of the room, it had to be on the other side. It's kind of interesting. But you can see from these few examples how much Jeff meant to our family and how much we will all miss him. Sorry, I'm the emotional one. We're never going to be able to share laughter with him again, discuss sports with him, enjoy a barbecue with him, or admire his tenacious spirit. The tragic and brutal taking of his life has resulted in a loss that I don't think we'll recover. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. You may step down.
That concludes the witnesses we'll be presenting, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Draskovich.
And we'd like to call Maryanne Ismail.
Yeah, you can. I'm sorry. I do.
Please watch your step. Yeah, that's right. And if you'll remain standing, raise your right hand, face clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Maryanne Ismail, Maryann. Last name is Ismael.
Thank you. Maryanne, do you go by May?
Yes, I go by May.
You know Robert.
Just a little. Yes, I do.
Tell us how you know him and tell us about the two of you, please.
Yeah, so Robert is my husband. We met 15 years ago. We've been married almost 14 years. And it's been well, you know, every marriage has its ups and downs, but it's been a good marriage overall, I would say.
Were you with him when he went through law school?
Yes. In fact, when we first got married, we not only had a baby, but he also started law school at the same time. So very busy time.
And how was that? What type of law student was he?
He's like, his work ethic is second to none. I've never met anybody who worked so hard, who was so ambitious and just wanted to do everything to not only move himself ahead, but to also make sure that he was able to provide for his family.
And what kind of a provider was he for your family?
He was a great provider. So, you know, not just monetarily, but also he was there. We're a blended family. So I have my son, his daughter, and then we have our youngest one is together. And he was always there, especially for our kids. He attended every single school event. Even if I couldn't make it, he was always there. He was the one that helped them with homework because I have very little patience. And he has just this unlimited amount of patience and was always able to walk our kids through, you know, difficult math problems or word problems or whatever it is that they were having, that they were struggling with. He was always the one that was with them after school and helping them through you know, schoolwork. He was also the fun parent. So he would be the one that would always present ideas like going for a hike as a family, and he was always the one that wanted. So he was very much, he loved to celebrate holidays and milestones, and always had something up his sleeve. So Easter, for example, was always a big deal. He was the one that would get super excited about decorating eggs with the kids and stuffing the little plastic eggs and hiding them all over our yard. So our kids would have such an amazing time searching. And you know, he shared a lot of his Mexican traditions with our families. Well, I'm Filipino, so he would share a lot of his traditions with our kids. So like things like where they have like the empty egg that's decorated and it's full of confetti, and you crack it on the kids' heads. Like he introduced that to our children, and they just he always had something. Even our wedding anniversaries. I always forgot our wedding anniversaries, but he never did. Always had a gift, always had something planned, even if it's just a dinner with just the two of us. One year he had planned this whole weekend getaway where we went up to Zion, we went hiking, he had planned like different tours where we went rappelling, and it was just the most amazing weekend, and it was so much fun.
I'm going to show you, and Your Honor, we have a number of photographs that are in a drive that will be given to the jury, if I may publish, and they're going to be admitted by way of stipulation.
That's correct. You three. They are admitted and published.
This is a picture here of you and your family, and this is a little bit older photo, and I know there's been a lot of press that this case has drawn. I'm not going to ask you the names of your children for obvious reasons, but this is a picture of you and your husband and your mixed family.
Yes.
Blended family.
Yes, our blended family.
You each had a child from a prior marriage, and then you had one in common.
Correct. Yeah.
How did he treat all three children?
Obviously the two girls are his, but he never treated my son any differently. So when we first met and we first started dating, my son was 3, but he never, even to this day, he doesn't treat him any differently than he treats any of the other kids. So calls
fair.
him my son. It's always he refers to the two girls as his sisters, or he would talk to his sisters about, oh, that's your brother, and it was never a question about, there was no step brother or half brother. It was just their brothers and sisters, period.
And that's fairly uncommon based upon talking to friends and other experiences.
Yeah.
Fair to say. In addition to being a family man, an attorney, having gone through law school during your marriage, was he involved in any community activities?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, even throughout law school, even before law school, so he was a very active Rotarian with the local Rotary Club here in Las Vegas. He was always involved with community service, planning events. He's offered his law services to help start other nonprofit organizations, and he would be the first one to volunteer if anyone ever needed help that he knew that he can assist with. And it inspired me so much that I actually became a Rotarian with a different club, which and it was something that we just shared together.
Is there anything else that you'd like to tell this jury that I perhaps have failed to ask you?
Robert is an amazing father, and like I said, even to this day, he tries to stay involved with the kids. He tries to share some type of an experience with them, even when he was at the detention center. Like him and my youngest daughter, they would talk about anime and manga, and they would send each other drawings that they had. And he really tried to continue fostering the relationship with his children, even when he couldn't be there, in person. Always made sure checked on, even would check on schoolwork, so I would love for my children to not lose that, at least not for the rest of their lives. Robert really is a great father, and he's a good husband, and I would love at some point to give my children the chance to have their father back.
Thank you, ma'am. I have no further questions.
No, Your Honor. Thank you. Thank you very much for your testimony here today.
Thank you.
You may step down. You may call the next witness.
Tanya Burton.
Watch corner of the TV. Right over here, Mark. Step up into the witness stand, please. Thank you. If you'll remain standing, raise your right hand, face clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Tanya Burton, Tonia. Last name is Burton, as in Nancy.
Thank you. Ma'am, obviously you know Robert Tellis.
I do.
Please tell us how you know him.
Robert Tellis was my first husband. We have a daughter together who is an amazing child.
Due to the amount of press attention this case has garnered, I'm not going to ask you your daughter's name.
Thank you.
How old is she?
She's 16 years old.
What can you tell us about Robert Tellis?
He is a great dad to her. He loves her. She misses him every day. He always helped her with so much of her homework because, I'm going to be honest, he's higher educated than me, and he's just good at that stuff. He's very patient, very thorough. They would spend Sundays together.
So he's an attentive father?
Absolutely. He was part of her soccer team for a while when she was younger, a great advocate for her diabetes, always up on the new technology.
And in reference to your daughter's diabetes, what type of a father, what type of caretaker was he with your daughter with
From the time she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, he was up on every single new technology, every single sensor, every single new idea, very big on what kind of diet she could have, what she needed, what she shouldn't have. Most of our arguments, even later, were over what she should and shouldn't have, and he was usually right.
Fair to say he's been a very hands-on dad.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And even given your separation from him, his new marriage, he's continued to co-parent with you the best he could.
Absolutely. Robert always involved even my newer stepkids and his family. They went trick-or-treating together. They celebrated all kinds of special events together.
So even though you had moved on and then ultimately had your own stepkids, he included them in his family activities?
Absolutely. I don't think there was one Christmas that went by with no gift, no anything. He was very involved in Olivia's sisters. You know, they were her sisters.
Fair to say that Robert's intelligent.
Absolutely.
Has a hard work ethic.
He does. A lot of drive.
In your opinion, is he capable of change, learning?
Absolutely. I believe he can get anything done if he chooses to, if he has that direction.
In addition to these questions that I've asked you, is there anything that you'd like to tell this jury that I have not asked you?
My daughter is 16 years old, and she misses her dad. And I know that you've made your decision, but I have hope that one day he can walk her down the aisle when she chooses to get married. When she has children, I'd like him to have the chance to be there with her, for her.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any comments?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much for your testimony here today. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
Our final witness will be Rosa and Tanya.
Yes, ma'am. Please watch your step. If you'll remain standing, raise your right hand and face the clerk.
You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Please state and spell your first and last name for the record.
Rosalinda Anaya, Rosalinda, last name Anaya.
Ms. Tanya, you are Robert's mother.
Yes.
Tell us about him and about your other children.
I was 18 years old when Robert was born, and he was my world. 3 years after, I had another son, and my daughter is 6 years younger. And he was a great big brother. Always took care of his siblings, was very loving. He never fought with them.
I'm going to show you a picture that you had sent to us and has been admitted by stipulation. Who's in this picture?
My two sons.
This one on the left, is that Robert?
Yes.
And the one on the right?
Is my other son, his brother.
How old was Robert, if you can recall, when this picture was taken?
Probably about 5.
Showing another picture that's been admitted?
That's when Robert was 8 months old. When he was born, he was my world.
And you would have been 19?
Yes. In that picture, I'm 19 years old.
Were you a working mother?
Not at that point, but when Robert was 13, I got a divorce from his father. And that's when Robert became the man of the house.
I'm going to show you this group of pictures that you had sent us. Why don't you start with the left of the screen and describe to us what we're seeing.
That's Robert as a toddler. Right there, he was probably 2 years old. The top picture is Robert with his girls at the father-daughter dance. and then the other two you.
Fair to say, obviously, this case has been very difficult for you and your family.
Very.
You had said that you began working, you were 13. I'm sorry, when he was 13, you went back to work after the divorce. Tell me about what
Yes.
it was like with him as your oldest child.
Like I said, he became the man of the house. At 13, I was working full time, going to school in the evenings. So he took care of his siblings, make sure that they were fed, got them to bed because I got home so late. Also at 13, I was a single mom. I remember I couldn't afford to buy them school clothes and shoes, and we would go pick chili. And I remember he was 13, and our hands were burning because the chili was so hot, even though we were wearing gloves. I'd fill up the buckets, and he would take them to the truck, and we would make like $2 a bucket. And it was a lot of hard work and a lot of buckets just to be able to buy them school shoes.
Where did Robert grow up?
In Texas, in El Paso, Texas.
And what was that like? What was his childhood like in El Paso, Texas?
Like I say, he's a very good boy, very loving, very supportive of his siblings and myself. On occasion, when I was threatened once physically, he was very protective and, came to my rescue to protect me, and he was only 13. Once he was in high school, he got a job at a gas station. He would also help take his brother and sister to school in the morning, pick them up after school. Has always been very loving, a great son, great brother.
Has Robert always had a good work ethic?
Very. Like I said, at 13, he started working with me in the fields, then in a gas station. As an adult, he was an IT tech, then heating and cooling, HVAC tech during the day, and then went to law school in the evening.
So he
Always wanted to better himself.
put himself through law school
Yes,
while being a father.
yes.
Finally, you've obviously had an opportunity to see him interact with your grandchildren and step-grandchildren. Just tell us about that.
He's an excellent dad. Always very involved. And like I said, even with me, as an adult, always helped me financially, emotionally. I have a lot of health issues. He was always on top of that. Even to this day, we talk several times a week.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I say one last thing, Judge, please?
Please, do you have another, there's something else that you'd like to tell us?
Yes. I ask you to please, I accept the verdict. But if you could please give my son a chance of parole. His family is still very young, and I would like for him to someday be back with them again. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm done. Thank you, Judge.
That concludes our presentation.
All right. Okay, so at this time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short recess. When you come back, you'll have an opportunity. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. And when you come back, you'll have an opportunity to hear from both sides in their closing argument. We'll go with Officer Cox, and he will bring you back in when we're ready. Thank you very much. You're excused. We just needed to formally settle the instructions. Is the state familiar with course proposed instructions 1 through 13?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Any further instructions to propose?
No, thank you.
And you're familiar with the verdict form?
Yes.
Any objection?
No.
Okay, Mr. Draskovich, are you familiar with course proposed 1 through 13?
Yes, I am.
Any objection?
No objections?
Any further instructions to propose?
That have not been given, no, they're complete.
Okay, and have you looked at the verdict form as well?
We have, and we have no objection to it.
Okay, all right. probably about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back in and start.
Thank you.
Relate to the presence of the panel?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have been provided with, Hawks, have you passed out the jury instructions? You will be provided with a copy of the jury instructions. There are 13 of them. I'm required to read them to you. As you know, you'll each have your own packet. You can follow along, and you'll be able to take them with you when you go back to deliberate. Number 1, is now my duty as judge to instruct you in the law that applies to this penalty hearing. It is your duty as jurors to follow these instructions and to apply the rules of law to the facts as you find them from the evidence. You must not be concerned with the wisdom of any rule of law stated in these instructions. Regardless of any opinion you may have as to what the law ought to be, it would be a violation of your oath to pass a verdict upon any other view of the law than that given in the instructions of the court. Number 2, if in these instructions any rule, direction, idea is repeated or stated in different ways, no emphasis thereon is intended by me, and none may be inferred by you. For that reason, you are not to single out any certain sentence or any individual point or instruction, ignore the others, but you are to consider all the instructions as a whole and regard each in the light of all the others. Number 3, the trial jury shall fix the punishment for every person convicted of murder of the first degree. The jury shall fix the punishment at 1, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, which means exactly what it says, that the defendant shall not be eligible for parole. Number 2, life imprisonment with the possibility of parole with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served. Or 3, a definite term of 50 years with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served. Number 4, a prison term of 50 years with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has been served does not mean that the defendant would be paroled after 20 years, but only that he or she would be eligible for parole after that period of time. Life imprisonment with the possibility of parole is a sentence to life imprisonment, which provides that the defendant would be eligible for parole after a period of 20 years. This does not mean that he would be paroled after 20 years, but only that he would be eligible for parole after that period of time. Life imprisonment without the possibility of parole means exactly what it says, that the defendant shall not be eligible for parole. Number 5, in the penalty hearing, evidence may be presented concerning aggravating and mitigating circumstances relative to the offense and any other evidence that bears on the defendant's character. Hearsay is admissible in a penalty hearing. Number 6, a reasonable doubt is one based on reason, is not mere possible doubt, but is such a doubt as would govern or control a person in the more weighty affairs of life. If the minds of the jurors, after the entire comparison and consideration of all of the evidence, are in such a condition that they can say they feel an abiding conviction of the truth of the charge, there is not a reasonable doubt. Doubt to be reasonable must be actual, not mere possibility or speculation. Number 7, the jury is instructed that in determining the appropriate penalty to be imposed in this case, that it may consider all evidence introduced and instructions given at both the penalty hearing phase of these proceedings and at the trial of this matter. Number 8, in your deliberation, you may not discuss or consider the subject of guilt or innocence of a defendant, as that issue has already been decided. Your duty is confined to determination of the punishment to be imposed. Number 9, the credibility or believability of a witness should be determined by his manner upon the stand, his relationship to the parties, his fears, motives, interests, or feelings, his opportunity to have observed the matter to which he testified, the reasonableness of his statements, and the strength or weakness of his recollections. If you believe that a witness has lied about any material fact in the case, you may disregard the entire testimony of that witness or any portion of his testimony which is not proved by other evidence. Number 10, although you are to consider only the evidence in the case and reach a verdict, you must bring to the consideration of the evidence your everyday common sense and judgment as reasonable men and women. Thus, you are not limited solely to what you see and hear as the witnesses testify. You may draw reasonable inferences from the evidence which you feel are justified in the light of common experience, keeping in mind that such inferences should not be based on speculation or guess. A verdict may never be influenced by sympathy, prejudice, or public opinion. Your decision should be the product of sincere judgment and sound discretion in accordance with these rules of law. Number 11, during your deliberation, you are not to communicate with anyone other than your fellow jurors in the jury deliberation room in any manner regarding the facts and circumstances of this case or its merits, either by phone, email, text messaging, internet, or other means. You are admonished not to read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. You are not permitted to do any independent research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or any other reference materials. You are further admonished to not conduct any investigation, test a theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other manner investigate or learn about the case on your own. Number 12, during your deliberation, you'll have all the exhibits which were admitted into evidence, these written instructions and forms of verdict which have been prepared for your convenience. Your verdict must be unanimous. When you agreed upon your verdicts, they should be signed and dated by your foreperson. Number 13, now you will listen to the arguments of counsel, who will endeavor to aid you to reach a proper verdict by refreshing in your minds the evidence and by showing the application thereof to the law. But whatever counsel may say, you will bear in mind that it is your duty to be governed in your deliberation by the evidence as you understand it, and remember it to be and by the laws given to you in these instructions, with the sole fixed and steadfast purpose of doing equal and exact justice between the defendant and the state of Nevada. The state may address the panel.
Your Honor, the state's going to waive the first clause and reserve for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Draskovich.
Thank you. You know, the jury instruction that I would like you to look at, and please pay close attention to, is jury instruction number 4. Jury instruction number 4 lays out the penalties that you are to consider at this stage in the case. You've heard a great deal of testimony in this case. You've seen a lot of exhibits. You've been attentive. We're basically rounding third base here, and you're headed home, and I'm going to ask you to, again, apply the same attentiveness, the same effort, and the same energy that you've expended up to this point. You know, when we pass judgment, it's an awesome responsibility because it takes two. It takes one to pass the judgment, and it takes one to receive it. The judgment that you make in this case will place an indelible life, or an indelible mark upon his life and yours as well. You've heard from the families, and in this case, we have 2 devastated families. Both families, through no actions of their own, have received the trauma of this case. The question now that's been put at your feet and that you must determine and you must pass judgment on as being the sole determinant of the facts is what's the appropriate sentence. You know, there's generally 4 purposes of sentencing. First would be that of restitution. Well, in this case, it's a murder case. There's not going to be a return of Jeff Gman's life, but then the question becomes, what does that mean? No sentence whatsoever that could be imposed is ever going to change that. The second purpose or consideration in the area of sentencing concerns deterrence. There's a fair amount of science on this subject, and you know, our criminal justice system does the very best it can, but heavy punishments in capital cases, capital punishments don't really have a deterrent effect. What we do have in our sentencing scheme in this state and most others are very harsh sentences. Every sentence that you are to consider will be the sentence imposed when you ultimately make your determination. It's not like a person gets sentenced and gets their sentence commuted. No, what you decide is the sentence that stays. You know, the third purpose or consideration is rehabilitation. And we're making steps in this society and in this state concerning rehabilitation. Any sentence that you determine is appropriate involves a prison sentence. We've heard from Robert's family. He's smart. He's capable of learning. He's got a work ethic. Any sentence that you impose, there's going to be a long period of incarceration, perhaps forever. And I'm going to ask you not to do that. But every sentence will have a period, a substantial period of time that would allow for rehabilitation. The fourth purpose or consideration is retribution. You know, I mean, most of us, this community kind of comes from this old Judeo-Christian, most societies, most cultures have this idea of retribution. And I would submit to you that as a society, we've gotten past this idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. You know, we end up being blind and toothless. You know, oftentimes, though, in society, and I will submit to you now in this stage of this case, there's just tug of war, really, between retribution and redemption. You know, in order for justice to be justice, there needs to be an element of mercy. You know, a person has to pay. There has to be this idea of punishment for a crime. But at the same time, there has to be this element of hope. You know, I'm not a religious person, but I know much of our society is religious in nature, and we have these ideas of atonement, you know, forgiveness. I would submit to you that we don't forgive to let an offender off. Forgiveness involves preserving ourselves. As a society, we have to have this element of mercy when it comes to justice. There has to be this element of forgiveness. The question then becomes, will there be this opportunity of redemption? What's going to happen in his life now? You've heard pretty compelling evidence, testimony from his family. You've seen the pictures. He's a loving dad to his natural children and those that aren't. He's got a work ethic. He's intelligent. He can learn. You know, the sentence that you decide, this connection that will leave this indelible mark on his life, how's it going to affect his family, his children? You've heard the evidence. We respect your verdict. What happens now? Give him the opportunity, give those children the opportunity at one time, decades from now, the opportunity to have their father back, their stepfather back. Maybe even his mom will be alive at the time when he's released. Let her have the opportunity to have her son back. It's a heavy burden. The judge has instructed you. Obviously, you're duty bound, as you have been in the initial phase of this case, to follow those instructions. Allow for there to be mercy in this determination. He's not going to speak to you through this course. Given the posture of this case, he's maintained his innocence, but don't punish him for that. You know, he's exercised his right to go to trial. This is what makes this country so great. You know, trial by jury, trial by our peers. Hold the state to their burden. That's occurred. You've passed your judgment. Please don't punish him for exercising his constitutional right, which is one of, again, these ideas that we adopted from this old English common law and that our founder fathers embedded in our Constitution. Please don't punish him for doing that, for holding the state to its burden. And they've done an exemplary job presenting their case. You've done an exemplary job reviewing the evidence. But now the question as to the appropriate penalty. What is it? It's not life without. The man has no criminal history. He's 48 years old. He's led an otherwise exemplary life. Put himself through school, worked climbing ladders, doing HVAC, raised kids. He's involved with his daughter's diabetes. He researches it. And even now, as he sits in custody, he's been a hands-on father. You know, oftentimes we deal in the criminal justice system with these recidivists, people that commit crimes over and over again and they just don't learn. You know, that's an appropriate sentence, life without. That's what you give a man that doesn't learn from his mistakes. That's what you give a man that continues to break the law, puts other people in danger. Given your decision, you have found that he's committed a crime, and now the question is, what's the appropriate punishment? I mean, I know firsthand, you apply to the bar, you have to give up every traffic ticket. If you're tardy and get expelled, they know about it. He was a licensed attorney. I'm not in any way saying that makes him a better person, but it shows that he had the wherewithal to put himself through school, to learn, and he had the background that allowed him to become a lawyer. That's gone. Give him a chance when he's an old man to maybe be around his grandkids or for them to be around him. He has a lot to give. Regardless of what's been proven in this case, regardless of what's happened, he has more to give. Locking him up, throwing away the key doesn't do him any good. It doesn't do his family any good. It doesn't do our society any good. Show him mercy, please. I'd submit to you that as a society, it's the appropriate thing to do.
Thank you very much. The state may address the jury.
Thank you. Can I proceed? Thank you so much. I want to touch on a few things. I think what you've seen over the course of this trial, when you've listened to, at least in this phase, when crimes like this are committed, they have a ripple effect. No one wins when crimes like these are committed. But one of the things that has to be abundantly clear about this is we're only here because of the actions of one person and one person alone. And it's the defendant. It was the manner in which the defendant chose to handle the situation that has created this ripple effect on his family as well as Jeff's. One of the things, when you do this long enough in our line of work, you see a lot of people come through the system. And the state would submit to you, he is not similarly situated to a lot of people. He is highly educated. He comes from a good, loving family. I'm not saying everyone does, but his upbringing is pretty good. When you think about the situation that he was in, the world wasn't going to end. He had simply lost an election. And the way Robert Tellis chose to handle this was devastating. And it was his choice and his choice alone. No one forced his hand. And so one of the things that we need to talk about is this idea of what they mentioned, retribution, redemption versus retribution. When you think about what happened in this case, think about the act that he committed upon Jeff. What was that? It was an act of retribution. Robert Tellis decided to be judge, jury, and literally the executioner of a man who was simply trying to do his job, to report the news. He executed him. He didn't have to do that. But that is how Mr. Tellis felt it was appropriate to deal with this situation. And he has taken this man away, essentially, at that time, the patriarch of his family away from his family. And why? Because he simply wasn't happy with what was being written about him. That is an extraordinarily serious thing to be considered when you evaluate what is the appropriate punishment. Because this is the way Mr. Tellis decides to handle things when he feels slighted. Another thing that the defense brought up was there needs to be a measure of atonement. We agree, atonement is appropriate in certain circumstances. But think about this. The defendant, when he got up and took the stand, was willing to sacrifice the reputations of a company like Compass Realty, the employees that work for Compass Realty, members of the Public Administration's Office, multiple members, specifically Detective Gaddis, Detective Jappy, Detective Mogg, members of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, their DNA lab, even the District Attorney's Office. Why? All to save himself. The state would submit that that is the length that he was willing to go to save himself. And it needs to be considered when you're evaluating what is the appropriate punishment. That's a really scary thought. I want to address something else. What is the appropriate punishment? The state would submit to you that life is an appropriate punishment. Whether it is an eligibility for parole after 20 years or life without the possibility of parole, I'm going to leave that to you. But I want to at least explain to you why the state believes a life sentence is appropriate. One of the reasons is, what did we learn about this case? That Mr. Tellis decided to exact death upon someone who he felt slighted against. And he certainly has shared all the different people he feels slighted against. The beauty of a life sentence is even if he's eligible for parole, if he gets out, he'll always be monitored. Because there is a future of dangerousness going forward. If he truly believes that all of these people did something to him, then there is a risk that something like this could happen again. It should be considered. Another factor as to why we believe life is appropriate. I don't want to paint it in too broad strokes, but we cannot, the state doesn't believe that we should ignore the fact that what happened here was literally a journalist wrote a story or a series of stories and lost their life over it. Because someone or a politician, outgoing politician, just did not like the consequences of the writing. That's a pretty serious thing. That doesn't happen very often, and it should be considered. Which is why we believe life is appropriate. At the end of the day, whether parole eligibility is something that you wish to grant, we'll leave that up to you. But at the end of the day, he was a highly intelligent person with a loving family, with a good background, who really did have his future ahead of him. His life really wasn't over. But he let probably his ego, his pride, get in the way, and it manifested itself in the worst possible way. And we have lost one of the most significant journalists we've had in our community in the world of investigative journalism. So we thank you for your patience and your time. And we wish that you consider these factors when evaluating which of the three punishments are appropriate. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hanley. At this time, the officers of the court will take charge of the jury panel. You can take your notebooks, your jury instructions, and you are excused to deliberate upon your verdict.
Thank you. All right, for acting jury to the third.
Does the state stipulate to the presence of the panel, including the alternate jurors?
Yes, Your Honor.
And the defense?
Yes.
Okay, juror number 2, has the jury reached a verdict?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can you please hand the verdict form to Officer Hawks? Yes, please.
Thank you. District Court, Clark County, Nevada, the State of Nevada, Plaintiff versus Robert Tellis, Defendant, case number C-368935, Department number 12. Verdict. We, the jury in the above entitled case, having found the defendant, Robert Tellis, guilty of murder of the first degree with use of a deadly weapon, victim 60 years of age or older, impose a sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with eligibility for parole beginning when a minimum of 20 years has served. Dated at Las Vegas, Nevada, this 28th day of August 2024, signed by foreperson, juror number 2. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict as read? So say you one, so say you all.
Yes.
Does either side wish to have a panel poll?
No, on behalf of the state.
Mr. Draskowitz?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, at this time, the verdict will be recorded in the official record. And at this time, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to discharge you from your duty as jurors. Before I do, I want to extend my gratitude and thanks for your willingness to be here. It's a long trial. You're a very good jury. You paid attention, you took notes, and clearly took the case very serious in your deliberations. You are no longer under the admonition not to discuss the case with anyone. You're free to discuss the case, but you're under no obligation to discuss the case with anyone. After you are discharged, you will go back to the jury deliberation room in which you will be given further instructions. I do always like to give the lawyers an opportunity to speak to the jury panel, because I think it's always good for them to have that opportunity. However, it's up to you whether you want to speak to anyone. You also may have noticed that there was quite a bit of media attention on this case. So members of the media may reach out to you and want to discuss the case with you. I just want to make sure you understand you're under no obligation to discuss the case with anyone. But if you do want to discuss the case, it's up to you. So this time, ladies and gentlemen, you are discharged. Again, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you. All rise for next jury. Adjourned.
The record reflects that the hearing is taking place outside the presence of the jury panel. At this time, the matter will be referred to parole and probation, and we will set it for sentencing.
That's going to be October 16th, 8:30 a.m. for sentencing.
Thank you. Do the attorneys want that opportunity?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll let you know when you can come back. Thank you very much.